Run and not look down. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, including our near neighbors, Shiano First Nation and Sauk First Nation. We recognize and respect our First Nations governments, all of whom have a long-standing relationship with the land and sea waters that continue to this day. Committee, are there any additions to the agenda? Pinks. We'll put Pinks under correspondence. Number 4. Anything else? We have move to approve. Mayor Little. Councillor Epp. All carried. Thank you. Public participation. Is there anyone from the community that would like to speak at the mic? Please do so, stating your name and the street in which you live. When you speak at the mic, I ask you to be respectful to the people in the room, the council, staff, and citizens. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity. It's Jim McPherson, Eagle Tree Place. I just had a bit of a preface, I think, before I have some questions. The municipality is a small one. It's only got about 5,000 people. There are 1,970 residential properties that pay taxes, 146 farm. About 27% of householders in the municipality earn less than $60,000 a year for household income. These tax increases spread out over a small population of property holders and a large number of property owners who can ill afford the increases. And yet there is no sign of increasing revenues to ease the burden. And so I ask, against that background, why are we spending $21,000 on new office furniture? Why are we spending $700,000 over 4 years for electronic signage that everybody blows through on the streets? Why are we spending so much on legal bills, particularly for unnecessary second opinions? And what kind of controls are in place to control exceeding budgets and to control spending in areas that were never budgeted in the first place? Thank you.
Hi, Patty Williams, 3659 Park Drive. First of all, I'm a rookie to this whole budget thing, but I really appreciated the last meeting when our CAO went through line by line and explained some things. I'm wondering, under the planning and environmental services, contract services are $245,000. I'm wondering if you'll be able to explain that for me. And on capital expenditures, Sundance Drive has a whopping increase, and perhaps there's something big that I'm missing there. I also wanted to applaud all the people who show up and the letters they write in, because there's some great ideas. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. Connie Gruber, Neil Road. I have already submitted a letter to you, which is included in the agenda package. Further research time was needed before I could question the topic of the bufferland. This is very important to me because I'm an adjoining property owner at the South Lobe, and I was a member of the bufferland working group. I have not been able to find any reference in the budget that would assist with any costs related to the bufferland, whatever the decision is for its use. If I recall, Councillor Donaldson attempted to have monies put aside in last year's budget. I think she called it a bufferland reserve. I don't think it was approved. In addition, the income from taxes on the industrial site provided through the land swap agreement must be buried somewhere, so I can't find it. These monies could help offset these costs. While perusing the agenda for today's meeting, I was able to read a letter from Deb Bacon. She's hit the nail on the head, I think. Using the Growing Communities Fund, which is $2.4 million, why not do one thing well? And because it checks off all the spending requirement boxes, it would be used to protect one of Metchosen's biggest assets, the gem called the bufferland. And it would help solve the long-time puzzle of what to do with this land. It could assist with staying on topic and focus. It makes sense to me that Council would want to move forward with a decision. This topic is now 6 years old. I truly believe that there needs to be funding of some kind to support whatever land use decision is made. Most of Council ran in the last election stating that they wanted to solve the land use of the bufferland, and if we don't have some funding for it, this may be very difficult to accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kathy Saluk, Nefru. I just wanted to speak on behalf of our fire chief. I hope that her requests are going to be approved. Some of you are aware of the difficulties, some of the events that the fire chief and staff attend to. To have to show up there by yourself can be very scary. I'm sure you know some of the details in the community. And she and the other guys at the fire hall have done so much to sort of embrace our community and support them in ways that are absolutely unique in the area. So I really hope with all my heart that you'll approve that. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Jennifer Burgess, Duke Road. I actually got up here with a lot of comments and statistics of some of your finances, but I see that there's some incredible letters attached that have come in late, so I think they answer a lot of the questions. I just wanted to read a little paragraph out of the Times Colonist. I don't know how many of you have seen it or read it, but it should, I think, give us pause and wonder about how we are rather embarrassed in the whole South Island community. The paragraph from our friend Stan Bartlett of the Grumpy Taxpayers, who may not be a terrific fan of mine or me of him or whatever, wrote in one little paragraph, "Stunned Metchosenites will show up knowing they face increases of about 100%. After hiking property taxes by 10.3% last year, hikes to policing costs, I would say to a lot of other things, are driving forecasts of 22.1, 24.3, 27, and 28.8%. That's one little paragraph in Stan Bartlett's article. But the implication is that Metchosen has the biggest problem of the 13 municipalities. You have until May to solve that problem. I think you have at least 2 more public meetings, and I'll bring some other comments to that, but I think you really have to dig deep and think about what is now being added to the 10.3% that we paid last year. This would mean, if we say 100% increase, that means double the current property tax within 5 years for everyone in this municipality. We currently pay $7,000 a year. That means we'd be paying $14,000 a year in 5 years. So I know I'm not at the level of a lot of individuals in this property and in the municipality, but boy, that'll hit me just as hard as some of them who are on different levels. So give it careful consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no other people interested at the mic.
Councillor Jones,
Yes?
could I just really quickly address, sorry, I'll go after that.
Come on up to the mic, please.
I think there's one other person. So.
Thank you.
Kiara Kahakawila, Perry Crossroad. Speaking today on behalf of myself as a resident and a taxpayer. I spoke at the last meeting and offered some suggestions and cautions and some observations. Over the weekend, I took a cursory look at the budget document for today, and it raised some red flags. I had planned on working through this earlier in the week to be able to send this to you, but due to some personal circumstances, I wasn't able to. So a couple of things. I do have some line items. Not all the line numbers are there, so I will refer to the items themselves. Pages 5 and 6 of your agenda. At first I was impressed that you could bring down the budget by over 6%, at least is what I saw, but the numbers don't seem to add up, and it seems that you're gutting Public Works to achieve this. That's the sort of the first document that you had with the green, I guess you can call it, on your in your agenda packages. Page 11, line 2110-2210 for council advertising. It was $4,000 was spent in 2022 and 2023 by the increase of $6,000. Line 2110-2481 training and conferences. I still find it exorbitant that $35,000 was budgeted for 2023 with $38,000 actually being spent. I know I'm not the only one who is curious as to what those monies were spent on, but good work on reducing it to $15,000 for 2024. But it's concerning that it raises back up by $10,000 for future years. Line 21105300, Council Other. In 2022 and 2023, this line item was budgeted for $3,500. In 2022, it was spent to $6,000, but in 2023, it has topped almost $18,000. What is being sent under an obscure budget item? For such a high overspend, the specifics should be known. Line 21105330, volunteer appreciation. One event is needed. Appreciate your volunteers by keeping the budget in check. The personnel section, and in no means is this in any way personal, these are observations and corresponding comments. Line 212110, administrative salaries. The original 2023 budget for this item was $413,000, until council added the amount for a full-time CIO in addition to our full-time CFO, adding $136,000 to make it $549,000. As the CIO position was left unfilled for 2023, only $483,000 was utilized. When I last spoke here, I reminded council that the majority felt strongly that the position of CIO and CFO needed to be separate. Currently, council has once again combined CIO and CFO, yet the projected line item is now still set at $601,000. At my last presentation to committee, I cautioned against normalizing this type of spending for future budgets. It seems that you have done this based on the numbers I see. This brings up another question. Does this amount for 2024 include the payout to our previous CFO? I know Mayor Little has read her prepared statement twice on the matter, and while the details of the separation agreement cannot be disclosed, the dollar amount sure can. These are public funds and you cannot hide them forever. The Sophie report will be out soon enough, and the amounts are required to be there. Does this amount going forward mean council will be hiring a separate CFO in the future? With a significant increase in admin salaries, so do the other following line items like administrative pensions and administrative WCD. Line 21222130 for the telephone upgrade. Perhaps this can be moved to one times and paid from last year's surplus. Line 21222220, legal fees administration. How did this jump from $30,000 to almost $54,000 last year? What was it spent on? And are you sure you've budgeted enough for 2024, or has your problem resolved itself? Line 2122-2325, software maintenance. What is the rationale for the significant increase in going forward? Line 2122-2701, contract for FOI. Are you sure you have budgeted enough here? When it comes to FOIs, the council of the day makes no difference. There will always be those who feel they are not obtaining the information they feel entitled to. This is the new way of life, especially with our woke generation. Page 13, the fire department. This is where I lose, there's no more numbers, line items. The fire department salaries are up by $156,000. The fire chief presented to your last budget meeting that there's been no discussion at this committee on their proposal. You need to do a deep dive with your chief to confirm what is needed and the implications that will have moving forward on budgets years to come. This is not a one-time ad. If it is needed, then do it, justify it, but do the work. Why is our fire chief managing the school facility, the bookings at the school facility? Is she a property manager now too? Is that a good use of her time? Training, line costs, and seminar fees. Why is this reduced from the last document by $5,000? Yes, we need to save money, but it should not be at the expense of training of our volunteers. Fire hall, line building, and equipment maintenance. Why reduce it by $2,000? In 2022, it was $10,000 budget item with $18,000 spent. In 2023, it was $12,000 budget item and $12,000 was spent. It is an old building, and as it was said as Mayor Little's first inaugural address, the reality of starting a build on a new department is not likely going to happen before the end of this council term. And yes, I saw the capital budget amounts in this package, but $2.2 million won't get you far these days. Page 17, bylaw enforcement. Bylaw service. The line is bylaw legal. You've reduced it by $40,000 to $30,000. Last year, almost $37,000 was spent. Is this wise, or is this setting up to go over budget? Which, by the way, from past experience, it never looks good when your legal expenses for bylaw enforcement go up. Page 24, transportation service. Members of this council made it a priority to not move forward with the planned paving plan from previous councils. This means more maintenance, and now this budget seems to be reducing that maintenance. This is a recipe for disaster that you may not have to manage, but your predecessors will. Is that the legacy that this council wants to leave? And I'm not saying that you need to go out and pave all the roads, but by all means, be careful at what you're cutting back, because things like crack sealing and shouldering, mowing, all of those things reduce costs when it comes down to capital because you're maintaining your asset. I will say from personal experience on my road right now, and I know we've talked about ditching here before, but our ditch hasn't been done in 2 years. It is now filled with maple leaves and blackberry bushes, and the water is still flowing mostly, but during big floods, what's going to happen? And a lot of our ditches have culverts on them, and those culverts are for people's driveways. When those culverts start blowing out and people can't get in and out of their properties, are you covered, or is that something that's going to be going through the municipal insurance and therefore increasing those fees with deductibles and the like? Sorry, I digress. That was not in my written notes. In 2023, $543,000 was budgeted overall for roads maintenance, and $550,000 was spent. Don't throw out the baby with the bathwater to save face now, only to have egg on your faces next year. Page 25, planning and environmental services.
Can you wrap it up, please?
Okay, I'm almost done. Planning and environmental services, line 26102700. Perhaps this council needs to seriously consider the work that is essential for a planner and what work is nice to have for a planner versus need to have. Do we need that second day right now? The contract for the engineer will be what it will be. It's beyond our control. But if some of the projects were pared down, perhaps that amount could be pared down as well. Note to our new CAO, Mr. Payette, with your background in recreation, I look forward to what you bring forward to this council for the school site and programming. I liked what you had to say at the last meeting, and I'm looking forward to hear more. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Avril from Windfall Road. I'll keep it short because Kiera did a great job. I have to admit I'm really confused over a lot of the budget, so I'm not even going to try and get that understood today. But I do thank the fire chief for her memorandum. but at the same time, I have to say, I'm not in agreement. I feel we're talking two things here. We're talking about a fire department that is maybe over and above what Metchosin needs. I know the fire chief has been far too busy on other subjects, and maybe it's time to get back to the fire department, and rather than the full-time employee for the fire department, that could be money better spent elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barb Swatsky, Kabir Road. This is a relatively small item. I would like to know the justification for spending money on new chairs and tables for this room. You're not comfortable enough in these chairs? I mean, why are you doing that? Your bums look like they fit in there quite nicely. So I'd like that one just crossed right off, please.
Anybody else? Okay, let's move on to the agenda, please.
Councillor Donaldson.
Yes.
Sorry, if I could, I just wanted to address the article that Ms. Burgess cited earlier. What that article does is it takes what are the cumulative increases added over time and puts them together as if those are the tax increases each and every year. That is incorrect. And I had issue with the way that was presented a number of years ago, last year. It was not explained clearly, and it was ripe for misunderstanding. So our taxes are not going up 100%. The way they were presented before was problematic, but it's doubly problematic now because the numbers are just used to represent tax increases. That is not the case. So thanks for raising it. Yeah, big error there. Thank you.
Thank you. That's okay. Let's move on to the agenda then, please. So we'll move on to now reports and the staff report for the 2024 draft 5-year financial plan. Would you like to give us a report, please, Mr. Peter?
Okay, thank you, Chair, to the committee and to the community. So a couple of items that were not addressed in the operating budget, or I promised to come back with some more information, are on page 12 of 47. So admin one-time expenses, which I now understand, because I actually have not seen one-time expenses in operating budgets before, so it's a new phenomenon to me, but I did talk with our staff, and for everybody's interest maybe, it is items that council can prioritize for purchase through capital using surplus from the previous year. Okay, so that's what that is. And it makes sense that they would be in the operating budget, because then they would show some kind of balance at the end of the year. So there's an orange highlighted line item that I'm not quite clear on. Maybe council can discuss that tonight on the one-time crossing guard, if that, and where that should be, and if that's going to be continued. And next, all the way over to under the transportation services. So total roads, snow, ice, and storm, the 3 line items. So I did do a review of the 5-year average, so the past 5 years, and including this year, this past winter. And it indicates that the average would be $170,000, and we budgeted for $185,000. So we can leave it if council wishes, or we can reallocate $15,000 to maybe something that more likely will need it, and I think somewhere in the area of minor works for public works or the signage budget, I would probably recommend reallocating $15,000 into that area so that public works have a little bit more operating budget for all of the things that occur during the year. And they get asked to do a lot of things, and sometimes it's not budgeted. And so I would recommend putting it in there, not to lose that amount, because I think we've trimmed the public works budget to the right level. I just think we could reallocate that. That's
Councillor Donaldson,
Yes.
through you. One of the areas that we did knock back a few years ago, last year, not a few years ago, was Public Works Other. And that might be an interesting one if we decided to reallocate that $15,000 to top that up. It allows some flexibility for Public Works, and again, that was an area where we talked about we would draw money out for support for the grounds users. So I thought.
Okay. One of the questions that came up in the presentation just earlier regarding the planning line item, that was I think 265. And I had a quick look there while everyone was listening, and I believe that is offset by the grant for one thing, and it also includes some of the work we're going to be doing for the new housing legislation that we have to work on in our bylaw reviews and our legislative
Mr. Can you
reviews.
speak into the mic, please?
Bylaw reviews and legislative reviews. So that hopefully addresses that question.
That's correct.
That's a big number for sure. I think it's important that we talk about that one for sure. I will review that line item with our finance staff. I'm meeting with them tomorrow, and I'll just confirm, but I believe that's the case. Okay. So other than that, on the operating budget, unless there were any questions from the council, wouldn't mind moving on to capital.
Committee, do you have any comments on the operating budget? Councillor Gray.
Yeah. I guess I'm just reflecting back on the last meeting. We've heard loud and clear from the public between meetings, actually, interesting circumstance for me to be getting phone calls and emails, but also in public participation, the importance for due care with our finances, keeping taxes as low as possible, no new programs, cut only where appropriate. So last year we had a 10.3% tax increase. In our 5-year financial plan, we predicted this year would be 11.8%. We passed that financial plan. A big chunk of it was staffing decisions, 3% increase last year and again this year. When we talked about those increases, we did not discuss as a council cutting services to our residents, to pay for those increases. And I was surprised when it came to our last meeting. Mr. Payette began, recommending a host of budget cuts, and I'm not able to support those. I think that there are a number of cuts that were proposed. They're in their documents now, or some of them are in the documents now. For example, cutting road maintenance. You wouldn't have known, but we had discussed at council the idea, we didn't settle on it, but the idea that we'd be doing more road maintenance. And we heard, I think, at the last meeting or one before about please don't pave as much from the public. In other words, we need the money in the maintenance budget to do it. So making I think it's a $40,000 cut to the road service maintenance budget doesn't fit with council's earlier discussions. The bylaw legal fees was another area where I think we saw a cut of $10,000 from the proposed, meaning we'd have less money than we had this past year. About $5,000 less to enforce bylaws, or at least involve lawyers in that question. Another one would be the COVID funds, where we'd already decided to put those monies aside. Elsewhere, I think it's about a $10,000 number. So I'm concerned that we're kind of working at cross purposes with ourselves in terms of what we've set up, and I appreciate the effort, to go in and try and figure out what to do, but it doesn't seem to fit very well for me. The other thing is that we seem to have veered from standard accounting practices. There was a discussion, the last one we went through the line by line, did we zero out some things because we had grant funding? But if we don't have them as line items, we don't have authority to spend the money. We can't have shadow books. They all have to be here. So I see things like the, at this point, road safety projects are zeroed out. Well, it has to be in the budget on page 23. We can't not have that money there if we actually want to proceed with those projects. And it may well be funded from a grant, but I can't see not having it there. We talked about forecast. Well, inflation is obviously in there. It looks like it's 2% rather than CPI. It's actually inflation. Looks like contract costs and looks like negotiated wage increases are why the numbers go up in the 5-year plan, not just the CPI as was suggested. The idea of averaging past expenditures doesn't work for me. We just talked about the snow removal. The numbers go up a year, they go down a year for particular reasons, but we don't generally in accounting average the cost to set your next budget. You figure out why it was up, why it was down, and you figure out what's the number for this year. So for all those reasons, I'm going to make a motion that Finance Committee revert to the January 26th staff report as the basis for settling our 2024 operating budget and not accept the cuts proposed without another line-by-line review. I think, so if someone would second that, I'll explain a bit further.
I don't see a second. Anybody interested in a second for discussion? No.
If I could then just make a few more comments then. I appreciate that people are anxious to get things done. One of my big worries is the time frame we have available to do the work here. When I look at today's information, I see that things don't add up. And I'm concerned with my fiduciary responsibilities as a member of council to be sure that things are okay. When I look at the budget increases on page 6, the budget increase looks like 8.18%. On page 7, it looks like 7.9%. And if we turn to page 39, it looks like the budget increase is 13.1%. I don't know how today we can make decisions if we're not clear what the budget increase is. So I don't know what we're looking at. It seemed to me if we had reverted to the January 26th budget, we'd very quickly get ourselves, I think, up to a 9% tax increase. I've got would have offered it out here to explain, but if nobody's interested in looking at that, that has to do with cutting new services rather than cutting our base budget. Really important thing is once these cuts are made, we're not getting the money back. And there may be a little nifty move here with the snow clearing budget to get back the money for our volunteers around the municipal grounds. But when we cut out $72,000 out of our public works budget, you can't get it back except with the tax increase in the future. And what we've done here is we used to be discussing the question of would we have a tax increase to hire a new person into the fire department. We're now discussing, or we're looking at, transferring money from public works to the fire department to fund that position. That's what's going on. We're looking at funding the trips to AVIC and UBCM by cutting the Emergency Operations Center. That's what these cuts have done. They've changed the dynamic. And so now when we look at things, we're seeing the offsets are really within the budget from public works, from the EOC, from the fire department. So there's quite a bit of cuts here, and I think last term we heard about a lot of numbers, but not much about what services have been lost. And so we're walking into this eyes open, cutting services to the population without knowing what we're doing.
Committee, are there any comments in regards to Councillor Gray's observations? Councillor App.
I just want to say that, ask Mr. Payette, because I know that he did discuss the changes or the various cuts that he made with the staff. And perhaps he could just talk a little bit more about the discussion he had with the Public Works crew about going over all those items and how it came to what was done.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you, Councillor. Yeah, so the process that was taken, and typically is taken for the budget, is to meet with the operating staff, not just Public Works, but all of the different categories. The most responsible person, go through the budget, analyze it, look at the future as well as the past, and determine what the most appropriate number would be for this year. And so that was done. And so I don't know really what else I can offer there, except for maybe it was a reality check, a review that took place. And the other interesting point is that I would like to entertain a asset management planning regime for the municipality, especially for our road system. The roads are in such exceptional shape. Really, I think probably the nicest roads in BC, in my opinion, and we want to keep them that way for sure. And there's been a lot of work on the roads maintenance and replacement plan in the past, and we don't want to lose traction on that. I know that there are, and the province and FCM are very keen on municipalities having an asset management plan in place, particularly for grant submissions. But it's good management practice, and I have not seen that here, unless I'm missing it, but I don't believe that has taken place yet. And so I would like to entertain this year that we follow through with the good work that's been done and get an asset management plan started with FCM grants or UBCM grants, whatever it takes. And then, so with that in mind, the relaying of pavement surface this year, I don't personally have a comfort level as to what has to get done and what doesn't. Others might, but I personally do not. On the CAO, I'd like to get a comfort level through the asset management planning process. So I'd like to undertake that this year. I have to talk to staff about this in detail. And they have, and I have confirmed that there's enough funding in place for the patching and sealing work that needs to be done on some of the trouble spots. And that would not be throwaway money, because as we know, there are some areas that need to be replaced in the near future, in the next couple of years. Patching work actually is part of the resurfacing process. So any patching work we do this summer and any funding put towards it is money well spent, because that would have to be done if we resurfaced. So that also affects shouldering and trimming and ditching, because we don't do as much of that if we're not rebuilding surfaces. The ditching issue is hot on my mind because of this. Soil remediation legislation has changed in the last couple of years, and we are required to follow the legislation and dispose of our soil appropriately. We do not have a location been chosen to do that, so we have to truck soil out and actually find a certified operation that will take our soil. And these are not easy things to do currently, and so that is something I have to work on as well as soon as possible to understand the cost implication of meeting that soil legislation, soil disposition legislation. I don't know what it's called, but I think everyone understands what I'm saying. So ditching, so that affects ditching, and where we're going to take all the product, because it's soil laden. And so I'm not suggesting that we're not going to do ditching, but I just want everybody to realize that that the legislation has changed for our operations, and we have to come to an understanding of what that's going to cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Just before you, Councillor Shukin, I just wanted to say, last year we saved $1 million in not paving vast amounts of roads that didn't need to be paved, and chose to go with the crack and the seal, and we're monitoring all those. We've had a very regimented practice of paving throughout the district, and we do a very well-established, solid surfaces in our roads. So that money, which would have taxed everybody in this room that actually pays taxes, was allocated elsewhere. On the thing on the asset management plan, this is something this council has been talking about in this past year, and there were plans to go ahead with that, so good to hear that that's still moving forward. Regarding the ditching and the soil and the legislation, I've been in contact with a number of different people trying to get somebody to come to talk with us about getting us a presentation. And one of our residents actually put me in touch with Aquatech, and I will be meeting with them next week, and the provincial and federal legislation was something that came up. We're actually, myself and another resident who's involved with the Bilson Watershed, will be doing a field trip, and then we'll arrange for a presentation here pro bono. They have a great deal of the background, so that'll be more information for our residents especially to hear, and help us make better decisions moving forward. Councillor Shukin.
Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. Just back to the transportation budget, and I just echo what you were saying. We talked about, I think we called it a road resurfacing plan or a reassessment, but I think it's more properly known as an asset management plan. Very supportive of moving on that. And, you know, I personally, the comments about not maintaining your roads, I think are well taken. We've also heard comments about maybe we put too much money into the roads, maybe the roads are too nice, and it has been noted that sometimes poor roads have their own sort of inherent traffic calming effect. You don't want to base that on poorly maintained roads, I get that. But one thing though, I don't see that there's any significant cuts to what we would see as road maintenance. The levels are maintained or increased, and I do get Mr. Pyatt's assessment from last time is that some of the levels from last year are a result of not being able to do the work previously. So I think we have a healthy road maintenance budget. The one thing that I think that's significant is I don't see a big paving plan for the coming year, but we are still allocating what seems to be an appropriate and consistent depreciation level going into road reserves. So I think that's setting ourselves up for the future as well. So, and I'm pretty comfortable with the operating budget, and I'm happy to move on myself with the talk about the capital budget.
Okay.
Should others not have comments further, but.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Gray.
Yeah, just to provide some numbers, we cut $40,000 from the road service maintenance budget, and we cut $30,000 from the shouldering budget if we proceed, and that's from our base budget, not from the what was proposed by our previous CAO and staff. We also cut $38,000, which was intended for, we discussed it last meeting, I was incorrect. The $38,000 was for a consultant engineer to help us with our roads, and we cut that money as well. That would be a person with technical knowledge of the matters, so that's gone. So that's a combined cut of $72,000 from the transportation budget. We cut another $25,000 from the road safety project that Councillor Epp was hoping to achieve. So there's plenty of cuts in there, lots of loss of money, and so that amounts to percentages of tax increases in order to bring that money back another year. And maybe I could ask the chair. So we heard at our last meeting then, the CEO led us through a variety of cuts to our budget, which we did not have the opportunity to discuss particularly. You and I have talked back and forth about how we didn't actually have an opportunity to talk about many of the items there. And I wonder if the plan would be now that we would go through those items that we heard about, or are we just proceeding without discussion on the reduction, all those reductions? I remind the council that we had a lot of time since November to look at these things, and we were all happy with them generally. and I'm happy with the staff's recommendations. That shifted markedly. And so I'm just curious, are we not going to discuss them, just charge ahead, or what would the plan be? As I say, I'm deeply concerned about the cuts because I don't see us recovering from it.
Mr. Peck, could you comment on whether or not there'll be further explanation for any of these cuts? Or shall we move forward?
Well, thank you, Chair. They were brought up in the previous Finance Committee meeting, and Council had an opportunity to review ahead of time before the meeting. So we did go through them one by one at the previous Finance meeting, which would have given everyone a chance to comment. And now they're again here in front of us in the operating budget, highlighted in yellow. So there's a chance to discuss now. My intention was to continue on with capital tonight because it'll be our first flush at the capital. Mostly wish list, I would call it. There's no decisions being made tonight, so there's always a chance in the next Finance Committee meeting to go through items again, and I believe a second reading after that. But we have scheduled in for a second and third reading later down in the schedule. So when we get closer to the first, second, and third and adoption, really reduces our chance to have ongoing dialogue about one-line items. But I would say at this point, at the next Finance Committee meeting, if there was some more minor discussion on the operating budget, that would be fine. So hope that helps.
Councillor Gray.
Thank you, Chair Donaldson. If we have another chance to go at it, I guess that would satisfy me to be sure that the council is aware of the issues that at least I can identify. I've spent considerable time since the last meeting going through through the details. I listened to the tape, I wrote it down. Now, I needed to do that because, in fact, we didn't get any advice before our last meeting that there would be a series of cuts made to the budget. So we did not know. We received no paper explaining it, no description of it. We arrived here and we just started going through the cuts without any knowledge beforehand. In addition, we received at the table justification for the positions at the fire department, not before the meeting, not an opportunity to look at it and consider the things. So from my perspective, the process is sort of thrown off by just driving forward without actually receiving the material in time to be able to look at it beforehand, review it, and then come to a meeting and know what's going on. That is not what happened at the last meeting. In addition, the papers today, I look at them and some of the sheets, they don't add up.
I have to agree with you there. There's been a number of changes since even just the last meeting. I mean, even basic housekeeping, there's numbers that have been blanked out. There's the 25,000 that's missing for road safety. I'm not sure where it went. I don't know if it's going to be just a one-time, but it was put in as a line item. Yet we still have $3,000 for the community house paving as a line item, which really is a one-time. So a few little things like that. It's definitely some discussion. And getting, memos last minute, that is hard to make decisions on, I agree. We do ask the public to put things in, and they're called pinks for a reason. It gives us time to read it, even though that's still a short period of time, but big decisions when you don't have all the information. But like the CAO has said, and this is something I keep reminding myself, as every 2 weeks I panic about this, is there's no vote yet, and there's no decision made yet, so we can go back and review any of the spots. Right now, I have no idea where we are because we don't have a summary in this particular package, and we don't have anything that says what our actual tax rate is with those cuts. So it's hard to sort of guide when we're studying that, through the week or the weekend, as it were, most days. So as housekeeping and remind yourselves where we're going, that would be helpful to be better prepared when we come to the meeting, not just us, but staff as well. Okay, so may I suggest then that we move on to the capital? Thank you.
Shall I proceed?
Yes, please.
Am I on? Oh, okay. So, page 31 of 47. This is some of the items that were in the capital plan, 5-year capital plan. So I wouldn't mind going through in the yellow highlighted area quickly. Some recommendations that the third item down, so the Public Works 1 ton, we can slide that over to 2025. And this again is in consultation with staff. The pickup we can slide over to 2025. And the all-terrain vehicle we can slide over to 2025. And I would like to recommend we do this so I have more time to analyze our fleet situation with staff. And there doesn't seem to be any desperation to purchase these items this year. Although they are aging, and for sure they are on the fleet renewal plan.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I just need to interject one moment. Now, Mr. Payette, if you could clarify those. So the items you're talking about here, these are coming from reserves, true?
True.
So these aren't necessarily going to result in a tax impact.
These are capital items.
Okay, so the chairs, and I am totally fine to not go with chairs so long as I don't get the squeaky chair and the one that automatically sinks. I think Councillor Rep has it today. So again, that would come from, say, the municipal equipment reserve, something like that. Okay, great. I think that's just important for community members who are listening. These are not like additional amounts that we're going to tax for this year. These are things we've
It's
saved
already
up for time.
been taxed.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Councilor Gray.
And that's an opportune moment just to mention, when you talked earlier about saving $1 million and reducing taxes by not doing the roads, there was no tax increase related to that either. It's saving in the reserves, not spending money that we have.
Sorry for the interruption.
No, those are all, they're all good questions. I mean, I must commend Machosen for depreciating items on the operating budget, because it's a great practice. And the depreciation, that amount goes into reserves, so that's how those reserves get built up typically.
Okay.
So, well done there. Yeah, next one would be, that I would like to talk about is the trails capital development item for 10,000. I think that one might be a little bit light, given some of the presentations I've heard since I've been here. So I would recommend $20,000 on that line item. And I should preface this by saying that we're going through a list of items and capital, and we're going to go through items that were brought up from councillors that are more of a wish list. And so my intention is to have robust discussion about these items tonight, and so that I can take them back and allocate funding to them. And so at the next finance meeting, we'll have the items prioritized and where the funding would come from. But tonight, it's too much to do in one night. So really just getting the full picture of what everybody wants, and then taking it back. And once we do that process with capital, as the chair has eloquently commented, is that we'll be able to balance numbers better. Okay, so we're still in the fact-finding process here, and the balancing of the numbers will come in due time.
Councilor.
Yeah, through you, I just wondered that $52,000 under the Trails Capital Development, I mean, that was originally earmarked for the William Head Trail, which never happened. I'm just wondering, since it was a 2023 projection, like, where did that get spent? Because I didn't think it did get spent.
It would.
No, but Councillor Schicken would have some.
Yeah, no, my understanding of this is that it was allocated for the Weir Beach stair repair.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay.
Yeah, so it wasn't spent, so, yeah. But at least not on the Weir Beach stairs, so.
So then what is happening to it? that money, where does that go
It
into?
just stays in the reserve.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
Yeah.
off.
No, that's okay. I would like to say this, and it's on rewind. We had a meeting the council did with Parks and Trails committee meeting the other night. And the one thing I keep asking for, and I think before we change this too much, we haven't increased the 10,000 in their regular budget for probably over 10 years. And some years they spend and some years they don't. However, they're long overdue for a Trails Master Plan. So I think it's better to have a plan first before we start thinking about costs. And then that way, once we get the Trails Master Plan, we can plan budgeting going forward. I realize this is just capital, but if we don't, it's just like if we don't have a strategic plan, it's hard to plan for the future, what our future finances are going to be as well. Councillor Gray.
I'll second that. Let's leave it at 10,000.
Councillor Shukin.
Thank you very much. The one thing I want to note, thanks to Mr. Payette, I would support increasing it to 20,000 because of the opportunity that we have with Duke Road East right now, the citizens who are mobilized and the attention that it's getting. I think we will lose a significant community building opportunity there. The one thing I just want to point out, now I believe that the gas tax reserve, which is currently valued at $728,000, actually does allow you to pull out money for active transportation, including trails. So there's $728,000 there. And meanwhile, we have a very robust reserve in terms of road maintenance as well. So there is room, I think, to allocate $20,000. So the one other thing I want to just mention is your point is well taken about the Trails Master Plan, and the only thing I would just worry about is how long that will actually take to do. It will take at least a year. We did the parks donation program that took I think almost 6 months to get from one piece of paper through. So I think the Trails Master Plan is actually going to take some time and cost as well. So I wouldn't want to hesitate and wait on what it seems like a wonderful opportunity just for that. I do agree it does need to be taken up, and we are going to talk about it at PTAS as well. So sorry, long and short is I think we have a fund there that we can draw on for what is essentially a small amount to move ahead with a big project.
Correct.
Yeah.
However, now you're saying it's $30,000. You have 10,000 already in trails development in the operating budget. This is capital. It's another $10,000. That neighborhood actually asked for $20,000, and I think that's 10 times 20.
True.
So is there more that you're wanting to spend on? I guess.
No, thanks. I do recognize that PTAS has a budget, or there's a Parks and Trails budget of $10,000. That is true. But there are other needs within the district that might go to. I will confess that those are not as yet identified, but the ask is for 20 for the Duke Road Trail, and then also to maintain PTAS budget. We might, as a council, decide that that's too much. But again, I just have to flag that gas tax reserve is there, and again, it's easy to, it's an opportunity to draw upon it for high value, I think. So,
Councillor Gray.
Sure. I'm just looking at an email Councillor Shukin from you on January 24th, saying that $10,000 towards the survey of the trail route, $10,000 toward the development, and it seems to me that the request actually is as Councillor Donaldson's laid out. I don't think it's a question because we have money in the bank that therefore we spend it. Rather, we need a plan. The plan is good. We approve a plan, then we can go and get the money as needed. But I wouldn't be drawing without some idea of what it'd be used for. We have an additional $15,000 allocated to the Weir Beach. So there's $15,000, and that I believe remains here. So the Trails group will be busy this year just with those couple of projects. We've been about a year, isn't it, getting to the Weirs Beach one. I think increasing it. We're in a situation where we're pushing hard and a lot of spending here, and I think we should be careful.
Okay. Next.
Okay, the fire equipment is pretty straightforward. Next.
Oh, excuse me.
Councillor Craig?
I just want to drop back. We heard from the, in public participation, but also was able to look at these documents, obviously, before the meeting. We've allocated $1,106,400 for fire hall replacement this fiscal. We've not made a decision on whether or not we're going to replace the fire hall. So I would suggest that should be removed.
Or just, if I may, or just slide over to the right. That's, so we don't lose traction on the project.
I don't mind, as long as it's taken out of the 2024
Yeah,
budget,
yeah.
because it doesn't
That's
make sense.
This typo. Good buy.
So CAO, are you suggesting we put that in for 2 years, 25 and 26?
Yeah, just slide over to the right. Yeah.
Okay.
And I'll just agree with Councillor Shukin, we could strike the $10,000 for new chairs in the council chambers and the $6,000 for new desks in the council chambers.
Councillor Shukin?
Okay, I'm not sure I was totally, sorry, I'd be curious to know what everyone else thinks about the tables and chairs. I was being facetious about the chairs. Yeah, I think there's maybe an opportunity to replace them, but it's not the highest priority for me, so. But
Councillor, did you
again,
have
sorry.
comments?
Yeah, I mean, I can see maybe not doing the tables this year as a hope, but these chairs are not nice. I'm going to bring my own chair in.
Yeah.
Well, we did obtain them secondhand. They have certainly had a good life. We had, as everybody knows, tried a different configuration with the table at the beginning of our term. And we did that for a year, and now we've gone back to where it was before. One of the things that we had talked about with the table and or desks, and some of you may have seen that in the screenshots that I provided for a completely different matter, but it was the layout of who sat where, and that's what that topic was. But in those screenshots, you'll see in many council chambers, it's a little bit more of a U shape, and they are usually movable type of desks. This is not high on my priority list, but it is, and it's also a more inclusive way of having a conversation. But at this point in time, I would say some of these chairs definitely need to be addressed. They're not something you can maintain. You can't take them apart and rebuild them, but those are just some things. We could move it on. I would like to just see it there, stay there. It's not costing us right now for a future discussion, not a decision tonight. Councillor Schuster?
Apologies to Mr. Payette for continuing to derail his run through this. I just, on the trails development budget line, maybe we didn't cover that off yet, and I know maybe that's not our task tonight. But the one thing is, I don't know if the Weir Beach Trail is actually allocated. It was budgeted last year, and I feel we have an obligation to finish up that work. But I wonder, I hear everyone who's here tonight concerned about how we're spending, recognizing that, again, these are from our reserves that are healthy. But I wonder if we should add the $15,000 to trails development, just so we know it has been budgeted.
Well, and as I understand, it's not spent in the previous year, does go into surplus, so that would make sense. It's money that's already been taxed. It's money that likely has not been spent, because we've been working on that year's stair project for a while. Is that correct, CAO? Is that how that would work?
Sorry, I didn't quite follow what he said, but
So money
we're not
from
going
last.
to lose traction on the Weir Beach Trails project.
Okay.
It's in there somewhere.
Right.
If it's not, I'll make sure it is, because it's going to get done this year. I thought I had it in the.
But we're still
I might
working.
have it in the big wish list here. I can't remember, but it's in here somewhere. Okay, can't find it right here.
Okay.
So that's in addition to what the 20,000 for Duke Road and the 10,000 for their annual amount. So
Okay,
$15,000 is a separate line item.
thank you.
You got it.
Councillor Gray.
Yes, I think it would be helpful for us to have a report on the surplus as soon as it's available, so we could see where the money's sit.
Yeah, that's a good point. So the surplus, we won't know exactly until we get the financial statements done by the auditors, but I believe this week they did a trial run on the statements, and I'm meeting with Sam tomorrow, so I might have a little glimmer of hope there, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so page 33.
Same one? Page 33, I didn't have anything specific. Oh, my point on page 33 would be, like, obviously, the roads and streets, budget allocations, I'm not recommending those two items this year. In the wish list items that we're gonna go through, I do have some comments about what we would like to do for the road maintenance. I believe Sundance was done, or that's just, I'm not sure why that's.
No, Sundance is not done.
Okay, but then
It's
there's
probably crack sealing.
crack sealing and patching, so, so don't worry about those numbers. We've reallocated funding for the roads maintenance. But other than that, the capital funding sources, as I said, once we get through the wish list tonight, I will have that available for the next budget meeting. So I can't really do that until I get the full wish list. Okay? And next would be, so I did want to show the reserves, and it turns out it was handy, so now council is aware of what are exactly in the reserves. Real time, always helpful when you're making decisions. The financial plan summary and the two, disregard those, they're just place setters so that you realize that everything builds up into the final summary at the end of our deliberations. I think there's a question.
Marilyn?
The only reserve that wasn't on here was the Growing Communities Fund that we had transferred into the Growing Communities Fund. Okay. 2.4.
And expect on this sheet, the COVID money's been transferred as well, so it's no longer available.
That's correct, that was still not sure.
Done last year.
I'm just gonna, I will
So although it's in
confirm
the,
the COVID money, I will confirm where that is, 'cause I'm not 100% sure.
yeah, it's not available. It's been transferred, I think, to the
Capital reserves, I
capital
believe.
reserves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was a $10,000 thing in the operating budget, which doesn't hold. This sheet, page 35 will need to be revised, of course, because we already talked about a number of things that don't fit.
Yeah.
And at page 37, why is this here? What's that?
That actually shouldn't be here for tonight because it doesn't pertain.
Thank you.
But it does remind council that we will do a summary, and it builds up sort of to the total equity statement at the end of the year. So it's good public information that we summarize and project out year over years. So that's all it's there for.
Isn't it to do with accrual versus cash-based accounting or something like that?
Yeah. Exactly.
So leave that to the accounting. Can I ask a question about page 39? When would, this is the 13% tax increase sheet. The police funding, at this point, we need to hear about that at some point before we do that after operating, or we need to figure out how much our tax increase will be for the police services this year.
Okay. That's on my list of things to do.
Great.
For sure. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, moving along. Now to the fun stuff. Okay, may I proceed?
Yes, please.
Okay, so what we've done here in the next few pages is an opportunity for council to submit items that they would have received from the public or from their committees or from their general knowledge. And so I was able to tabulate or put them in a table. Took a bit of time to prioritize based on my knowledge and discussions with some of the members. And so I have highlighted some in yellow, so I can talk a little bit about the ones I've highlighted in yellow. And other than that, though, if the committee has had a chance to go through the prioritization, unless you disagree with my prioritization, I'd kind of like to move ahead without going through them line by line and do some magic with them this week and next week and allocate appropriate funding towards the line items. If there's things you want to strike out, then now could be a good time to do that. Some of the costings, obviously, I have not had time to do project costs. That takes a significant amount of time, but I can start picking away at potential costs for the line items in the next week or two. So for page 41 and 47, the signage and the grounds maintenance, I highlighted all that because it really harkens to operations, and those items we would try and cover in the operations budget. They're not really a lot of capital there unless it's over, say, $10,000. As onesies and twosies, they're not. So my recommendation earlier was to reallocate that $15,000 into sort of public works minor capital line or wherever you want to put it, but that might address some of these items as a discussion point.
Is this the municipal hall signage or the grounds maintenance?
All the signage, like they're all, to me, they all harken to operating costs. So, I don't need a decision now. I'm just saying that's to me a lot of operating costs. The bike jump signage, again, that would be in the operating budget.
That's already budgeted.
Okay. If there's any other items on this page?
Councilor Gray, do you have a comment on this page?
I'm just asking you, process-wise, are you wanting us to comment at each one as we go through, or are you wanting to give us all of them and then have us come back? What's the plan?
Well, we could go through each one. It'll take some time. You've had these spreadsheets for a couple days now. Is that right?
Yes.
So it hasn't been a whole bunch of time to go through them. There will be an opportunity to go through them again line by line next committee meeting. We can go through them line by line tonight, but I haven't allocated costs or funding sources. This is just the list with us. So I was hoping we'd go through the items. If you think I've missed anything, maybe add them, or if there's anything that is just like totally off the wall, then we can delete it. So we're not making any decisions tonight.
Councilor Gray, or Schicken, sorry.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Pyatt, through you, Councillor Johnson. Mr. Pyatt, the yellow highlighted is there any significance to the yellow?
Yeah, just that they are more something I put in the operating budget.
Okay, thank you.
So, yeah, so I probably will do that, but I wanted to show what the list was from everybody's, so I wouldn't miss anything.
I just have a question about this one. It says municipal hall signage. I believe that was, we have a sign out on our driveway. It says municipal hall. It's only one-sided. It's not very visible, but it's a big sign. We also have Welcome to Metchosin, a nice big sign over on Metchosin Road, not Happy Valley side or Kangaroo. So this particular one, I think, is more is a big sign, not just a wayfinding sign to put out at the end of the driveway, so people actually know that we're up at the end of the driveway. A lot of times people come and they don't know really where we're at. So I don't know why that would just be under. I don't know how much the sign over on Metchosin Road cost. Certainly that's much larger, but this, I don't think this is a wayfinding sign.
Okay.
But anyways,
Okay.
just an observation.
Yeah.
Councilor Gray.
So when I'm just imagining, I mean, we can sort of become familiarized with the list. I've gone through it naturally. But the question I would have is this the year to add more to our operating budgets? So if these are operating ones, maybe there are things to delay given the tax increase we're facing.
Well, I already know that the bike jump has a $500 budget every year. It never gets spent. And there is a little bit of work that needs to be done. And mostly it's just moving the sign and a bit of remediation with the grounds around there. So we've not invested any money in that since it was built. And it's been over there. It's been there over 10 years.
Yeah, so if it's already in the operating budget,
It
it
is
doesn't need to
already.
be discussed
Yeah.
further. Yeah, I wouldn't, I think most people can find their way to the municipal hall without new signs at the moment.
So a couple of the high priorities, which I would consider for 2024, would be the municipal hall heat pump for this building. I believe in the last couple of years, the temperature of the inside of the building is at a point where it's an unsafe work environment, and we would probably have to shut the building down. And I don't see climate change getting any better in the future, so I would consider that a high priority. Light covers, I put that as a high priority. There's interest in becoming a dark sky community, so I would probably suggest that to do that, there's some light covers that would be in fall. So that, unless council does see that as a priority, but you did approve the dark sky regime, so that would have to be done.
Yeah. Setting an example on all our buildings would be a good idea for our residents.
Medium items, I would suggest could move over to 2025. So I can write that up for the next committee meeting, allocate dollars that way. Next page, 42, 47. Signage again, operating, subdivision servicing bylaw, and the rainwater management plan. I believe that the subdivision servicing bylaw we would like to do, and we're going to have discussions with that in strategic planning, so that's why I highlighted that one. And the rainwater management plan, I'm not sure if that was done in 2023, but that's where it was supposed to get done, so I included that, and if that's something council still wanted to pursue, we can discuss either tonight or the next meeting.
Is this an update of the one we already have?
I'm not sure, it's just,
Okay.
it was in 2023, and I don't believe anything got done, so.
Is it great?
And these are not capital projects.
Well, it depends on the price. So we could use grant money for plans, depends on the price.
I mean, they're not capital expenditures. They're, if you have a contractor do it or staff do it, it doesn't result in a asset,
But we can use grant money for planning.
Grant money, yeah, it reads capital budget
Yeah.
worksheet.
Yeah.
These aren't capital projects.
Yeah, that would include grant funding.
In past, what we've had is a sheet about one-time funding,
Yeah.
using surpluses, and a different sheet about capital expenditures, so you can differentiate
Yeah.
between the two.
Okay.
Councillor Jones. Sorry,
Yes.
through you, and that was my question as well. I see that there are one-timers in here, and yeah, and it would be good to actually clarify that. Now, if I could throw in one thing, I've been waiting to find a place for some potential funding to look at the buffer land. And there's an assessment that we may only this year get to the point where we can do an objective assessment as to the buffer land working group's recommendations. Now, it might be, sure, if our current planner is qualified enough to do that, but I think she's going to be really busy this year. So I'm wondering if we might allocate something in the order of $25,000 to resource that assessment. And I think that's really all we can expect to do this year is some reasonable look at the recommendations that we put forward.
Yes.
So,
And the working group did talk about a reserve, and I did bring it to the table, a $25,000 reserve. That money comes from the tax money we actually get from the industrial park, and I don't think it went anywhere, so I'm glad that you brought it up again, and that one of our residents did as well. Instead of us bringing it up each time, we actually need to act on it.
I've brought it up every budget meeting so far.
Okay.
yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, I think there's good consensus around the table of yeah, the importance of doing
Yeah, I believe the report from the working group was $20,000 to $50,000 in years 1 and 2 anyway.
Mhm.
And that was to discover, I think, whether or not we were going to carry on with that whole idea or not.
Councillor Ann.
Well, I would like to see a parks management plan that included all our parks and included the buffer land area as well, rather than just focusing on that one section. We have a lot, we're going to be facing a lot of pressure on our parks and trails in the future, given our neighbors, and I think it's important to look at all our open spaces together.
Seal.
Through the chair, just so I'm clear, just based on what you're saying, so the buffer land assessment, $25,000, is that what you're considering the management plan of that land, or what am I missing something here? Okay.
So I don't disagree with Councillor Lorette about the importance of doing a plan for our parks, but we're not there with the buffer yet. We don't know whether we're going to turn it into a park. So I think that's the job this year, is to see how practical and reasonable and what it's going to mean to make it a park. And I wonder if we could do that work this year and then maybe ideally fund that assessment that Councillor Gray is talking about next year, because we will have a sense of where we're going with our park, and that will be the biggest park that we have. So that would be my suggestion. Yeah.
If I may, I just supplement a little bit on some information. So I believe this is something that is obtainable this year based on my understanding of the design of the retention system for the water. We should have some kind of information on the design by like midsummer, or maybe sooner. And so in my mind, it would be nice to know that first before we started an assessment of the overall piece of property, so we know, what we're dealing with as far as the lay of the land. But I think it's attainable based on what I know now from meetings with Langford. So I would suggest that we could probably get that plan done this year.
Okay, great.
Councillor Gray, Councillor Shukin, just for clarification, so this $25,000 would be to hire a consultant, a planner. We've got some money in the budget for a hydrologist. But this is aside from that, so this would be some kind of consultant that would have planning experience. That would give us recommendations based on the recommendations of the working group.
Exactly. Yeah.
What's feasible,
whether,
what's not.
There you go.
What are the pros and the cons, and the SWOT analysis specifically on each of the recommendations.
That would be the plan. Yeah. And again, I go back to the meeting on November 7th where we provided our direction to to staff to do pretty much what you're saying. So yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Gray.
And so that direction was provided by staff, to staff rather, and have we heard back that they need $25,000 to do a study? Is that where we're at? Or we're waiting to hear back, I think.
Yeah. Come on.
So
my
just
sense,
25 grand is a whack of it.
well, okay, yeah. If we can take that out of the appropriate reserve, I think that is again value that we, and it's an appropriate thing to pull out of a reserve, I would say, especially with them, some of them being quite healthy.
So I'll just for my clarification, because I need to know. So $25,000 came from advisories from the committee kind of thing?
No. So what we did is we did provide staff with a plan in terms of a 5-year plan toward attaining a park or an ecological buffer zone. But the question before us right now is whether we should even go in that direction. And so I think there's some assessment work that needs to be done. And so that's what the funding would be. So the funding could be, I don't know whether it comes out of a reserve or surplus, but the funding could possibly be for extra planner time, engaging a consultant.
Okay.
And now I provided the planner with sort of a framework of some questions and how to approach this, but she and yourself are going to be able to have a better idea once.
Okay, so just trying to gauge if it's the right amount or not, and if it's in my kind of flexibility, and that's all.
Well, and I guess my point was, rather than committing $25,000, we need to hear from our planner what she thinks, because she's on it right now. And she could respond and say, I need 30 grand or 50, or I don't know.
Well, okay.
So setting a dollar amount doesn't make sense until she returns and says, this is what I need.
And through the chair, yeah, that's a good point. So it's in place there, obviously. I have it. I can bring it forward at the next finance committee meeting with maybe a little bit more fidelity on what the planner thinks would be a appropriate cost, but we'll leave it at 25 for now.
Sure, and it doesn't look like it fits in the reserve.
No, it'll be probably.
Okay. And thank you, I see that. It was just a matter of making sure it was accounted for, with the one-timers.
Yeah, okay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, so moving on. That was excellent from you. Thank you very much. So some more highly prioritized items on page 42. The fire hall feasibility study, the development accessibility plan, and a truck crane. Contract hydrologist, which we just talked about, at 20,000. I thought I heard 15, but maybe I misheard. And a little bit lower, building regulations bylaw. That I don't believe requires any more funding. It's almost ready for review from council, but it's in there as a reminder from 2023. So unless I've missed a mark on those high priorities, let me know. And I can build the capital and the one-time budget.
Great, and I think what I'm a little bit confused about is a number of these items are actually just part of the work plan for the district and the plan. And I'm not clear, are we just trying to sort out the work provided by our planner who's on contract? Is that what we're doing here with these bylaw issues? Some of them are worked on by other staff, Corpus, Deputy Corporate Officer. So these are work done by staff or by contract, and I'm not clear why there's one-time money attached to them particularly. But maybe the next phase will explain that.
Go ahead.
I think in 2023 there was allocated money towards them, but they're not completed. That's why I have it still here. And so I can, in the next round, I can say completed or not. And if there's any residual cost, I can add that, just so that we don't lose track of the item. Make sense?
So Councillor Gray, are you asking that be separated out from the one-times then?
Well, I think that
So we have a progress sheet and then a one-time sheet?
Yeah, I mean, we could have capital in a set of sheets. We could have one-time in a set of sheets.
Mm-hmm.
And then my issue was some of these things I believe were done by staff, and that I don't know that there were costs attached to them in terms of us approving last year's budget, but perhaps there were.
Yeah, they were. Okay. Moving on. So down at the bottom, a number of items are high priority. The school site that we are now in operations, furnaces, rooftop heater unit, exterior upgrades, the school roof maintenance, and the public parking space painting. That's not a high, but that's on the list, maybe in 2025. So why are they high is because these are building code and safety items that if we do not correct and somebody gets hurt, we get sued. So not to scare anyone, but these are important items to make sure that our risk management plan is in place. The exterior upgrades, it's a medium, and so I did go through the items with the gentleman that was with MACA that was working on these items in the past year, Chris.
Chris,
Yeah, super guy. Really appreciate his work. I do, for sure, because he took me around and showed me a lot of the work he's done to make it safe and what we need to do in the very near future to continue to keep it safe. And the $50,000 allocation, I would say, is medium. He's done everything on the exterior that we need to do from a risk management point of view, but the next year or two, there's a number of items that have to be corrected as well, but I would say we can budget that for 2025. Flooring is high now. We are very close to renting out another space for childcare, and the flooring is unsuitable, so the flooring has to get done to make it safe for the kids. So there's rationale behind the prioritizing for this year. Over to the next page. So 43 of 47. Can I just press ahead, Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay. High rated items, bridge repairs, municipal hall roof. We had it assessed this past couple of weeks. It needs to be replaced immediately. We just have the one quote, so I would obviously get at least 3 quotes, but that's the case on the roofing. The emergency operations center and the fire hall also are in a dreadful condition and need immediate replacement, but because we're looking at a significant project with that building, I can recommend we can move that over to 2025 so we can have a bit better understanding of schedules there with building replacement. And the little washrooms outside, that roof has to be replaced as well. And I believe at the bottom there are 2 items that are high. So the observation wells, I don't have a cost on that. I believe that's a kind of I would say a regional provincial, mandate. I will try and work with the province on monitoring wells and continue to advocate for the municipality. So it's high, but there's no cost attributed to that at this point. And like anybody who wants to help me with that project, I'm open to any help on getting through that. I believe it's vital as well, and I'm surprised there's only 1 monitoring well in our district.
Councillor Johns.
Yes.
Sir, hey, just want to pass on thanks to Mr. Pyatt for including this here. And I suspect this isn't one that would qualify for a grant so much. I mean, it is a provincial matter. If you want it to be part of the network, it is. And I just mentioned, there's no well within our district itself. The observation well is actually near past Stook. So it's quite a ways away, and effectively it's not doing anything for us. So, but yeah, we should. It's great that this is on here. So thank you.
If I may, in my previous municipality, we were off on wells and aquifers, and this is not just the chosen. It's all across BC. These are important times. We were able to take some old wells and convert them to monitoring wells. And if anybody's listening in the community and they know of old wells, might be an option to help lobby with.
Councillor Gray?
Yeah, maybe I'll just mention again about process. So this came up because of a wish list request. And I didn't realize, putting a wish list was going to end up on council table in a public meeting. But the reason I suggested the observation was so that, again, to bookmark it. But in me at home on the computer just saying, let's look at wells, I don't know who does that, if it's the province or us. So it wasn't meant that we should jump in on it, because I don't know that it's even our role. It's all divided out. Certainly, I'm just not aware enough about it. So it's here not because the district should do it, but because it seems to me it's something that ought to get done. But so I apologize if it's not in the right place in terms of discussion.
It's a good point of discussion.
Yeah, that's why it's there. Thanks for that. So that pretty much concludes the wish list that I call it, for lack of a better term. And if there's anything I've missed, this would be a good time to add it to the capital one-time list. And my intention is to work hard in the next 2 weeks and bring back a fully established spreadsheet.
Councillor Gray?
Thanks for that, and thanks for working on the one-time. I think once the one-times are separated out, that we'll know what's the top, we'll be able to prioritize them. Like this is not so easy to do.
Yeah.
And then if we come back with sheets with, and these priorities were set by yourself and who?
Myself
Very
and me, and I.
good. Okay, because it probably, what we would want to do is look at that list and then say, once it's in one sheet,
Yeah.
and actually comment about the priority levels. We inherited a pretty good budget situation when we were elected with, debt-free municipality, great reserves, everything like that. But we want to be very careful that we steward them and don't just spend them because we got some wish list ideas. We want to really check in, I think, with the community in terms of what things are useful, which are like ideas that, for example, the few that I put on here, those ideas, they're not been measured or tested or discussed by anybody, except me and the computer. So we would like to come back to them and actually have some discussion here, what other people think.
Councillor?
I just wanted maybe in one of these titles, but outdoor lighting at the school, it's quite dangerous out there. People getting from anything going on at the school up to the big parking lot. That could be in there somewhere.
Yeah, I think we identified that on the first page too, just with out here even. Yeah, and coming out.
It's the same thing up triple light.
Yeah, in the winter for sure, from the other meetings. On page 42, there's a line item there where it says fixed roads. This is an old line item that was eliminated partway through last year. Laban Road got fixed. Windover was completely repaid 2 years ago. So they can be totally taken off of there.
Yeah, I did, my bad.
No, it's okay, it's
That's
just a
New
reminder.
guy thing, so, I did talk to the crew there, and those, what they're gonna work on this year is the highest priorities are Windfall, Sundance, I'm gonna get this wrong, Lindholm and Lombard, those 4 areas.
Okay.
So I'll replace last year's with those areas.
Mayor Little?
Yeah, just through the chair to Mr. Payette. So with the asset management plan, if we had had an asset management plan, we would have known about the roof, for instance, for this. That would have been a part of that. So all of the buildings will be assessed, all of the assets, all of the tangible assets will be assessed and given a life on them. Okay, thank you. That's too bad, that's a lot of money.
Councillor Gray?
And I hope that, when you mentioned the roof on the fire hall needs immediate replacement, so we have to be careful that we don't drive replacing the fire hall because the roof is leaking. That's a different problem than replacement. I think the sooner we get to our, as we talked about in a different meeting, the actual decision about the fire hall, not fire alarm housing and not fire alarm this and that, but the fire hall, then we might be able to repair that roof or not, depending on the decision.
Councillor Shukin?
Page 42, I do know that there's that previous reference to roads and culverts management plan. And I wonder if that can be part of the asset management plan for roads, and so maybe it could be removed.
Which one?
So it's page 42, it's just above fixed roads. Laban, Windover, Sioux, Glen Forest.
Roads and culverts management plan.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
that's,
absolutely.
yeah, so that can be
Yeah.
blended into, yes, that's going to be my question.
Was that something in 2023 that just hasn't got done yet? Was that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Through the chair, what we talked about was the idea of not paving so many roads. and finding out from a consultant whether that was a good idea or not, what the cost might be. And the proposition was that more maintenance would be better than road paving. And so that was, the question was paying somebody $50,000 to come and help us understand that question, given the roads we have and the condition.
Any other comments, committee? Okay, so we'll move on to the next part of the agenda. And we'll open this up for an opportunity for the public to give some comments, please. And please step up to the, that's the next one. Yeah, that's after this. Yeah, just following what it says here on my agenda. So this is the part where it's the opportunity for the public to have a comment of what we've just discussed. If there's anybody that would like to stand up to the mic, state your name and street in which you live, you have some feedback or other ideas or comments.
Jennifer Burgess, Duke Road. Curious, it's just a couple of questions. First of all, our CAO, through the chair, said appreciation goes into reserve. So a rather major appreciation is the 1.671 million increase in school assessment. Now that is not physical funds. So somewhere though, when you do your needs study, etc., and appreciation of everything that you own, don't forget that rather large chunk that has now grown in the assessment of a school. And I think that gives a little bit of a boost to how we feel about our municipality. And I'm very proud of being part of convincing the council to buy it. The second part I had was how much interest do we get annually if we keep storing this 2.4 million grant that we've received? It can't just be sitting there. I would think somewhere we're getting a rather major amount of interest from it. And where does the interest flow? Does it go into the reserve too and not available to us for the rest of our budgets, capital, operating? So that's really a question for you, because it must be a nice piece of funds that flow into us. So those were a couple of the questions I think that I had at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi again, Kiara Kahakawila, Perry Cross Road resident. So a couple things. On page 25, when you were talking about the issue that I brought up about contract services for planning and development, yes, you do have the grant for helping with the housing issue, and you can use that towards the planner's time. But if you take a look going forward, 2025 and onwards, that number hasn't changed, and it's gone up with inflation. But so this is what I meant when I said about normalizing the budget. So in years 2025 and beyond, we don't have that $172,000 from the provincial government. So maybe we might need to take a look at what that number should actually be moving forward. Do we need to have $300,000 and beyond in our planning and engineering services? Maybe we do, don't know. On the question of one-times, yes, it is relatively unique here to Metchosin. It is one that our auditors have approved. And it was brought in, I don't even know how many years it was brought in, but it was a very useful tool, and it's designed to take the surplus from your operating. And once you find out what that surplus is, then you can say, go to your departments and say, okay, give us your wish list. That's how we've done it in the past. I'm not saying it has to be done this way this time, but this is just some background for you, and also for the residents here who may not have ever understood how we did it. You'll find in each of the department sections, it'll have a notation where it says one time, and usually, well, actually in the past, we had this long list of one times, and it went back for several years, and we said, you know what, actually, can you just condense this? We only need to see what we did either in last year or the year previous. And so once those one times have been expended, they fall off the system. They're still there, but they're closed down, as you know, with an Excel program. You can just minimize what you're seeing. So there's some history there if you want to go back and look and see what we spent on one-times. And then, of course, there's capital, different from technically one-times can be considered capital items, but they're spent out of our operating surplus, so therefore that's why you see them in the operating budget line items. As far as the asset management plan, yeah, absolutely, it is needed. We do, however, have a pavement management plan and have had one for a number of years, and it's maintained by our engineer, which is maybe something that the new engineer needs to look at. So if you're looking at what to do about our roads, and thank you very much for noticing that they are in very good shape, and it is, as Councillor Gray has pointed out, due to stewardship from previous councils, is that start with that, take a look at it and see what needs to be done. It is an older system, and we did look at in the past of getting a newer system, but the cost was prohibitive. So again, you might run into the same situation, but again, the information is there. When it comes to the chairs and the table, just a little bit of background. I don't disagree with you. I think you do need new chairs, but I don't think you need to spend $10,000. Just a quick online search, you can find some really comfortable boardroom chairs for around $250. Let's say 9 chairs, you've got 5 of you here at the table, plus some extra ones for some spares and obviously for staff. You're looking at around $2,250 just for some decent chairs. As far as the table goes, when I first was on council, we actually had that table and a couple of other weird ones put together. It was kind of this mismatch thing. And this table actually came to us, I believe, from BC Ferries.
No, CRD.
Okay, CRD. So it was a boardroom table that was being released, and we took it up. I know that you did try a different configuration, but having worked at 2 different types of tables in this room, this one's actually pretty good, and honestly spending $6,000 out of our capital reserve is probably not really something that is necessary. Anyway, I think that's it, just some background.
Eric White, 4290 Chosen Road. In terms of the ditching and just a pie in the sky idea of possibly creating an asset from Chosen of maybe a composting facility where we could manage our own ditching material and charge other municipalities for their ditching material and provide composting services for our community, as well as possibly a end product for our farmers and local growers. Thanks.
Leonore Davidson, 900 Speyside Lane. I just like to talk about the ditching. Since I work for highways, you cannot, under the environmental laws, dig the ditches up and do anything with them. They have to be recycled properly. So very expensive. It's an expensive item, and you can ship it off to Dawson Creek, like in a lot of cases, and very seldom is there a place now to deposit it. So no recycling for chickens or anything.
Katie Nelson, William Head Road. I just wanted to make a comment on the thought of having compost facilities is very endearing to me. I love that idea, but the thought of putting ditch material in that composting is, I don't believe, a good idea at all. The things from the road that go into the ditch are not things that people would want to have in compost that they would buy or that they would want used in those types of situations. If we're going to do something with that ditch material, I think we have to take that in mind.
Anybody else?
Corey Sievert, 255 Pearson College Drive. I just, about the taxes and the tax increases where it was showing, I looked at a plan that was dated May of 2023, and you said you wanted to correct it. So what are the tax increases over the next 4 years, like the proposed tax increase is going to be? Because there was big numbers, like okay, it's one thing, 10%, but then there was 21, 25, all this, like, for the next 4 years. Now, are those the actual tax increases per year? Because, I mean, they're huge, and they are doubling the taxes if that's the case, but maybe I missed something in reading the report.
Yeah.
Those were cumulative, so if you had like 12% and then the next year was 6%, it would say 18.
Okay.
And then it would be
Okay.
billed.
Because the way it's written,
so
I think a lot of people are going, what, you're raising, so you're over a 5-year period. Okay, so that's somewhat an acceptable amount. But the question I had was the reserves, because again, I was looking at the report and one of the other ladies had talked about reserves. So how much reserves does Metchosin have? Because I'm assuming, I'm not an accountant, but you're talking huge numbers of millions of dollars, so I'm like, at what point do we have enough reserves? Is there a government, provincial government requirement to carry a certain amount? Because I'm all about saving. We have a reserve for our family. I think that's good and that's prudent to have those, but you can also get in a situation where maybe you can have enough and maybe give some people that I think that, there was money being made from taxes and arrears and different things. So I'm sure there's people that probably might not be able to afford the tax increases that are coming. So I'm just curious, how much reserves do we have as a community? Rough. I'm just curious, because most communities run deficits, so there's a certain point.
Yeah, we can Here it comes.
Sorry, and mine was dated, and it was only 18 pages, so it didn't say it on the.
No one. Yeah. Okay. Oh, I see. Good back. Good back. Come on. Okay. There's small print.
Yeah, I use them too.
Okay, general capital reserves, and unfortunately we'll have the description of what the reserves are for here. That is a good sort of policy and description of all reserves, but I'll just give you the top title and the amount for 2024, and then project it out for a number of years. So general capital is 536,000 and change. Roads reserve is 4.2 million. Parks acquisition is 263,000 in reserve. Fire vehicles, 169,000, and just keep in mind we just recently purchased an asset. Looks like it was just going to be $400,000 or $500,000 plus grants likely. So municipal equipment reserve is spent this year, so nothing, but there is a reserve there. Municipal building reserve, 2.2 million. Policing reserve is at 740,000. It got whacked here a couple of years ago with our 5,000 population threshold.
Sorry, what was the policing?
It's now at 740.
So just so I'm clear on this, so we budget what we think it's going to be for the police, say next year, right? It's going to increase whatever, and that actually goes in the budget as an expense, and you're still keeping the reserve though is still there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what?
It's if I can interject, one of the things we have done is because we don't know what those costs are, we're able to pull out some, and that's what's actually in the operating budget. We pulled out some of the reserves to offset the big expense, and our that's why our taxes were really high last year, because it was a 70% increase to pay for policing, up from 30. So we do take some out to sort of buffer as we go, and we replenish when we can.
But I think roughly the policing budget was about 800 or 900, roughly what I looked at in the past. And you're saying you have so you're going to budget that for next year in taxes, and you still have a $700,000 place. It's almost like a 85% reserve for a contingency on policing. Am I missing something there when you're talking?
Yeah.
Okay.
So council has asked me to clarify this particular reserve.
Yeah.
So I'm going to do that for our next
Sure.
budget meeting.
Sure.
Yeah, and then so I would hearken it like a stabilization reserve, as the chair said. That's been allocated in previous years, understanding that we're going to get whacked by RCMP on a big bill. So we've been able to buffer the costs with the stabilization reserve. That'll run out here eventually. And that's what council wants me to determine is when we're gonna run out of that reserve
Okay.
before we meet the actual cost of the RCMP. And
Okay, so you're taking a little bit out
That's right.
every year.
That's right.
But like, I guess what I'm getting at is you're not adding more to that reserve as we go, are you? No. Because I guess what I'm saying is like you say, okay, you got 4.2 million in reserve for roads, which I understand when they pave the roads, it's a huge expense. But again, you must budget not using that. Like in my mind, the reserve is there for an emergency if you need to allocate. So is that reserve of 4.2 million is just money that was budgeted for roadworks and it didn't get used and it just sits in a reserve? Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a minimum and there's a maximum. We had a big printout last year, but we can get that again from our accountant. And getting back to the policing, it is a phase in. So we didn't start off with like 4 police officers. We've added 1 this year, plus there's a staff member that goes with that. So each year, and there's I think it's the mayor could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was a 3-year phase in until we maxed out on how many police officers we actually paid for. And that's where the reserve helps offer that for our residents.
When it goes up.
It's not such a hit. I think it's similar with any of the reserves that it helps gauge things as we have projects coming up. Councillor Epp and then Councillor Gray.
That amount in the road reserves it's also in case of a disaster. Like say something happened and to the bridge on Kangaroo Road, like it's millions of dollars to replace a bridge. So we need to have that a pretty big cushion in the roads reserve for something like that. Or say the way the atmospheric river wiped out roads in the interior, that could happen here, and that money is for that kind of thing.
Yeah, but I would imagine something like that generally would be the province and other places would also be contributing cash. I'm not saying about not having reserves, I think, but it just, in my opinion, it seems like the reserves are quite healthy. And if there's a way of, I don't think that, in my opinion, with tax increases going up the way they are, I don't think there's a need probably, or you could look a little bit, of not adding to reserves or, being a bit more reflective to the community, paying tax. Like, it's great that we have reserves. I think that's prudent, that's good. The councils beforehand, obviously we're frugal and save money. I think that's not a bad idea, but I think maybe there is a lot of reserves, and I think that, if there's a way to, maybe limit the tax increases, I think that's my opinion.
Yeah, and that is something that we talked about, and I think that's what Councillor Schiffman was referencing earlier with parks development, trails development.
Yeah, so very little money is taxed to go into the reserves. It's dealt with, as mentioned earlier, through depreciation and calculated that way. In June, we'll look at the reserves.
Okay.
So that's the cycle. But as regards to the police reserve, I don't know if you're explain, but you're seeing in the documents here it's zeroing out. In other words, we're using operating money, but that's not what's going to happen. We're using reserves entirely. But my question to the CAO was, could we now have our plan for that? What happens each year is that we want to take a little bit of a tax increase every year, use the reserves to buffer us, but we need to take a tax increase every year so that the amount that we're paying on taxes to cover the police gradually increases. So when we get to the cliff and the reserve is gone, we're almost there.
Yeah, you're almost
At
there.
the very end, there'll be a big lift, depending on the decision around the council table here. But we'll try and bring in a certain amount every year. So when you look at the numbers here, say today's discussion is at 13% or 7% or whatever it is, we haven't done the police thing yet.
Yeah.
So it's going to be more money than that, than what we're talking about at the table.
Yeah.
Although we're not clear about what it is.
Because I think just people, when they see numbers like 12%, 13%, like in 1 year, that's suddenly, there's a line, right? We all see inflation, we know what it is, we know everybody's wages, all costs are going up, like we all know that. But suddenly when you start seeing numbers above 10 continually, I think that's when people start getting, and it's not just your city taxes that are going up, it's all taxes for everyone, right? So that's just my,
No, and thank you very much. I have to say, I think there's a temptation politically to maybe winnow away what might go from depreciation, say for roads, into a reserve, because of exactly what you're saying. Politically, it's probably can be pretty expedient. There are, apparently there are communities in this greater CRD where that was happening, and the new council is now having to make up the reserves, and they're seeing significant tax increases. So it's I do commend the last council, and the councils before, for maintaining a good reserve for us. And I think some of the levels in certain of the reserves are optimal, and I think we can look at funding some of our one-times through those. But I still do believe in maintaining decent reserves, especially for roads and other capital that we need, yeah. But, okay, thanks very much.
Hi, I'm Jill Armstrong with Sandra Road. So follow up to the lady's comments over here. After hearing those numbers, that's a lot of money. So I want to know exactly what those reserves are invested in, how much we make a year on those reserves. Are they in stocks? Are they in GICs? What kind of money are we making off all that money? That should be a huge amount, right? And I want to know exactly where that money is reserved. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Gray.
I believe it's all highly regulated what we do with that money, but perhaps Mr. Beck can explain.
Yeah, I can help there. So we get through the budget process, deliberations, approval process, then we have the auditors. They come in the next couple of months, I believe, in March. The auditors will check our balances, check our statements, and then they will provide council with an annual audited financial statement, and in the audited financial statement, information about interest on accounts and budget, or total number in the accounts is all in the audited statement, and that's a public document. So.
But what's the money in? Is it in a savings account?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's just in a savings
It's all in
account?
savings. Oh no, we have invested. We have invested funds as well, and
Okay, it's just,
yeah, the
we need to
invested
know
money is
exactly
also
how much we make a
fund
year
balance.
out of our interest.
Yeah.
Is the investment through the municipal finance authority? Is that who does that?
I
for us,
think
or?
so. Here, I think so. But I have to look at it.
Any other questions from the public? Okay, so moving on to the next part of the agenda, the last part. It's a staff report, the provision of free municipal products in municipal buildings. And can I ask our Deputy Corporate Officer to come give a presentation on that topic, please?
Good evening. Can you hear me? So this was a request from council earlier, or partway through last year, and back in June, and they had asked staff to investigate costs associated with providing products, feminine products in district facilities. There are a lot of distributors that provide dispensers and products. The commercial dispensers range from approximately $400 to $650 each. And there are mini dispensers that are they're approximately $30 each. We currently have 12 washrooms throughout all of our facilities. And there are a few options for council to consider. Option one is the purchase of the commercial dispensers, which is approximately $7,000. Option two would be approximately $360 for mini dispensers. And then there's an option to do a combination because some of the washrooms would be more suited for the mini dispensers, like the outdoor washrooms on the grounds. And then council would just have to consider the cost for purchasing the products and replacing them. Any questions?
Any questions from the committee? Councillor Ray?
I think we had a number that was in relation to sort of equivalent to toilet paper cost for replacing. What is that running at? Did you?
Yes, through the chair. So the district paid about $260 between the school and the municipal hall on just toilet paper. So the replacement cost would be probably similar to that.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what the chief spent on toilet paper down at the fire hall, but
A lot, I bet.
probably.
Councillor, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I like the third option that's listed on page 47, which was be to install one commercial dispenser in a designated central location and near a washroom in each building, apart from the EOC and municipal grounds, which may be better suited, it says, for mini dispensers. It seems like that would be a good economical way to start, and then just see how the program works out.
Councilor Jones. I was thinking the very same thing, even if we could just pilot it for.
I agree.
Yeah, so.
Yeah. Somebody want to make a motion to that effect then? Yes?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to that effect.
Second.
Any other discussion on this topic? That call the question. All in favor? And it's carried. Okay, and then number 4, correspondence. I just want to acknowledge that we've got some letters from the public, from 2 from Ms. Bacon, 1 from Mrs. McPherson, and 1 from Mrs. Gagnon Moscow. I hope that you have read those. There's some very good thoughts and concerns shared there with us. This information, as with all that has been shared tonight from our public, we can leave and bring back to our next meeting. Okay, so I'll just, do I need a motion to just accept this as correspondence, right, for information? Okay. And so with that, I'll call for an adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you. And second by Councillor F. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.